Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah. How are you? You look great. God bless you. You look great. You look very good. Happy to see you. How are you doing, young man?
Yeah, good.
Good to see you.
I'm good.
Charles. Likewise.
How is her food doing?
She's doing well. I think she's going to join us after the tasting. I told her you want her to be at the tasting. She says, you know, she has a few things she wants to do. Now it's being recorded.
I know you have to get this more lots of needs. But you know what is that? Everything.
Oh, I'm all for vinegar.
That's good. All right. I think at least 30 seconds to begin.
You're ready, right? Yeah. Yeah. We're headed down.
Give me a list here, right? You should come. Oh my loads. Take this.
Okay, smile.
I'm on candid camera, am I?
Okay, I got it. Okay.
I'll give one to Tony.
And I'll take.
Thank you, Tony. Here. Wow. Exactly. Thank you. How are you doing? Thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna have that.
All right, so welcome everyone. Good afternoon. And what we're doing here, more cheese is coming, by the way. And quick commercial before we start. My younger son decided he wants to experiment with bread making. So the bread is made by him.
Uh-oh.
And the olive oil is made by my brother in Spain. The olive oil, I have to say, if you like olive oil, it's delicious. So if you like olive oil, take a piece of bread, dip it in the olive oil, and you will see the olive oil is also on sale on the back of your sheet. And what we're going to do today is we're here to taste the wines made a year ago. Everything that went into the barrel basically is being tasted today. And therefore in total we're going to be tasting 10 wines, which if you think about it is a lot of wines. So disclaimer before we start, our insurance policy is terrible. And therefore you don't have to drink everything I'm giving you. Those of you who want to lighten up, we have spittoons, and anything you don't want to drink, feel free to put it in the spittoon. And it's considered to be very professional to even spit. You don't have to do that, but if you want to, feel free to do so. So what we're going to do is start with the two Chardonnays, because they're both made in barrels, and since this is a barrel tasting, we taste everything that was made in the barrel. The first Chardonnay is the 2014 barrel fermented Chardonnay. We've been making this since 1989, and it has been pretty much consistent in terms of quality. Year after year it comes out. Tony, there are glasses on the table there. Does everybody have a glass?
This was the year ago.
The glasses are over there.
Okay.
And fermented, not aged, fermented in oak barrel. And that's what these wines are. This one doesn't say barrel fermented, but it is barrel fermented. So what is the difference between the regular barrel fermented and the Grand Vintage Chardonnay? And therefore, the Grand Vintage Chardonnay, number one, we don't make it every year. We only make it in years where the quality gets to a point where it merits the distinction. And it is a wine that is made, number one, from a different clone of Chardonnay. There is a clone of Chardonnay called Chardonnay Musqué in French, or the Muscat clone of Chardonnay as we call it. But it is Chardonnay, it has nothing to do with the Muscat grape. It tends to express itself in a more tropical-like flavor. And then there's a greater proportion of new oak barrels. To talk about the vintage, 2014, if you recall, was a year which was, but by and large it was in the mid-80s, mid to upper 80s. And why is that good? Because the vine, as it photosynthesizes the CO2 from the atmosphere to create sugar, as it does that, it creates heat, and therefore it wants to cool itself. And to cool itself, it has to perspire. And if it runs out of water, it shuts down. And the likelihood that it will shut down at 95 degrees is very high. Whereas at night is number one, the color. There is no browning whatsoever in these wines. And what that means is that the fruit was very clean. There were no blemishes in the fruit. And therefore, that announces already an amazing qualities, the color by itself. What we're tasting now is Cabernet Franc. This is the regular white label. White label is something that we tend to make every year. When we release a white label, it tends to be drinkable upon release. So these are therefore, by definition, the lighter red wines. And there is nothing light about this wine, actually. This is a gorgeous Cabernet Franc. You could enjoy it for dinner tonight. And by the way, talking about it over time, is that the wine contains tannin. And tannin is what you dissolve from the skin and from the seeds. It's a bitter product which has no smell otherwise. And tannin tend to be antioxidants, and they preserve the wine from oxidation. And over time, as tannins scavenge whatever oxygen or oxygen compounds are in the wine, they get depleted. And what you deplete first, we're going to get technical here, forgive me, you asked a question, we're going to enter monomeric tannins. These are tannins which are formed, tannins are called polyphenols, which is another word for the solids from the grape. And tannin is not a product, but a family of phenols. And you have the so-called monomeric tannins. By the way, as I'm talking, the next wine is the Merlot. And so the monomeric tannins are built around a single carbon atom. And those of you who remember your organic chemistry, a carbon atom has 4 negative electric charges.
Oh, I remember.
Very good. And the alternative is the so-called polymerized tannin, which are long chains where the atoms combine into a very long chain. So if it's monomeric with 4 negative charges in solution, it's ionized, and therefore you perceive it on your palate as astringent. And so
Say it again. Merlot.
Merlot.
The monomeric tannins, which are highly astringent, are the ones that are actually protecting the wine because they preferentially scavenge the oxygen that enters the wine. You will notice as we move from here to the wall that from barrel to barrel is like climbing upstairs because increasingly you're going to see the wine gaining in structure. So the next wine is a Cabernet Sauvignon, and therefore if these two wines are going to be 5 to 7 year type wines, the Cabernet Sauvignon probably will be more 7 to 10 years because this has a lot more tannin into that distinction. And that's another good question, and we're going to try to answer it. And the secret is two words, extraction and concentration. And what does it mean, extraction and concentration? Okay, so I can't talk and pour at the same time, it seems. So extraction, as the juice ferments, you begin to produce alcohol, and alcohol is a solvent, and you begin to dissolve from the skin of the grape color pigments and tannin, which are what binds the color pigments in the skin. And therefore, when you have a grape that's very ripe, the skin literally dissolves into the increasing alcohol. Did I give you some?
Yes.
To increase, that's where you gain in intensity of flavor. And if on top of it you get small berries, what happens is with small berries, all of this intense flavors is going into a small volume. And that's concentration. So for concentration to happen, you have to have very high level of ripeness and small berries. And what does hot and dry weather do? Small berries. When it rains, the berries inflate with water, you're diluting the wine. When it's drying, when the weather is dry, you're actually concentrating it. We're not doing it, Mother Nature does. And therefore, when we talk about concentration, we're talking about small berries of very ripe fruit because you're concentrating the flavor. The first wine we tasted those are technically the same grape from the same winery, the same vineyard, the same year, and yet the difference is going to be very large. What makes for the difference? These were smaller berries from a different clone of Cabernet Franc. You have greater extraction and greater concentration. And that's really a long-winded definition of what is the difference between a white label and the Grand Vintage label. So you're going to get a much higher level of extraction and concentration when you taste this wine.
So you mentioned that one of them was a 5 to 7 year wine. Do you mean if we bought a bottle, we should wait 5 to 7 years to drink it?
You don't have to wait, but it will have the potential to improve over that period. Actually, they're drinkable tonight, if you ask me. But not every wine has the potential to age gracefully. The idea of aging wine is unfortunately overdone. 99% of wines should be drunk within the first couple of years. Some wines have the potential to actually improve with age, and that's where we begin to talk about that, therefore. And so, but it's probably somewhere between 15 and 20 years. Now, I say that with some confidence because if you looked at the report from the Wine Advocate that was published in June, they actually tasted our Tuthill Lane Cabernet Sauvignon from 1995. That's a 20-year-old wine, and they rated it at 93, and that wine has not peaked yet. And so what does that tell you? That after 20 years, it's still showing the potential for further improvement. Now, because we have a reference point. And therefore, I think these wines will be very long-lived. And you know, the actual length will depend actually on how good is your storage. Because at the end of the day, I can say all I want if you have lousy storage. It won't finish.
Well, what makes good storage?
Good
What makes-
storage is the temperature of the underground, which is about 57 degrees, and about 60% humidity. And it has to be constant. If it goes like that, think of the space between the cork and the wine as a piston. You know, you heat it, it expands, you push it, come back. If you do that by temperature change, that piston is very active. Sooner or later, it's going to work some air through the cork, which will oxidize and damage the wine.
That's the deal. Got it. How confident should they be? Do you know what I mean? Does it matter?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
The better liquor stores actually tend to have a refrigerated space for their more expensive wines. What you have on the shelf should be the fast-moving items, because when they're young, you know, a wine that's 1 year old, 2 year old is not as fragile as a 20-year-old wine. So if they have older wines, hopefully they have a refrigerated space. Otherwise, you may be buying the label rather than the wine.
Thank you.
Okay, so we tasted the first Grand Vintage wine. The second one is the Grand Vintage Merlot. I got lots of very positive comments on this wine from people before you. So let's see how you guys respond. But that's the second Merlot, therefore. It will be quite different from the first one. And again, the two key words, extraction and concentration. And at the end, there's a test to see if you remember the definition.
E27 plus 1.
Yes, ma'am. Isn't that a beautiful color?
It's gorgeous. How much racking do you do on these wines?
I'm going to leave Shaggy to answer that question.
We don't rack them that much.
No, you don't. It's very little.
They all get racked about 3 times before they're bottled.
What is that?
Racking means you're transferring out of one vessel to another, either from one barrel to another barrel, or from like 10 or 12 barrels into one tank and then back into barrel.
And what happens when you're racking? Like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or
No, it leaves residue.
Yeah, one of the primary reasons you rack is to get the wine off the leaves. The leaves are the dead yeast cells that settle at the bottom of the barrel. And like Charles was saying, as the wine develops, one of the enablers of development in wine is oxygen, like he was saying. And so he was talking about oxygen ingress in the bottle, but in the cellar there's also oxygen, and one way you get oxygen is when you rack.
You want some to flabby, because you're missing out, because what brings the flavor out are the organic acids. So if it's too cold and your palate is inhibited from tasting, you're losing money on the transaction. Okay, so now we tasted the first 2 Grand Vintage wines. We're going to move to the assemblage, which is a blend. It's a blend of Cabernet Franc, Grand Vintage, the Grand Vintage Merlot, and the next 2 wines which we haven't tasted yet, which is the Tonnel's name Cabernet Sauvignon and the Apollo Dark Verdot. And the assemblage is a Bordeaux blend. It has about 50% of the Grand Vintage Merlot, about 30% of the Tonnel's name Cabernet Sauvignon, about 11% of the Grand Vintage Cabernet Franc, the rest is Petit Verdot. So it's really a Bordeaux blend with the 4 varieties. And here we go. This is again, check the color on this wine. It's a beautiful wine. We made that wine for the first time in 1993. Ever since, it has had a very good following. And we try to see the color, what a pretty hue. One of these days my finger is going to slip and somebody's sweater is going to get colored.
It'll be an honor.
yeah.
No, it's going to be wine. I'm sure. No, the last few times
Yeah, give me some.
Yes.
he was pouring on he was pairing up with the Chinese.
Yeah, each two. And Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a block that we replanted in 2008. And when we replanted it, it was with a new clone of Cabernet Sauvignon that had come from France to the United States back around the year 2000. And that particular clone is characterized by very small berries. It almost looks like Petit Verdot. And if you remember what we started with about concentration, when the berry is small, the skin to juice ratio is very high. Therefore, the extraction from the skin and the pits is very high. And if the grape ripens well, you're going to have great intensity. And I think that's what you look for always. The size of the berry is what makes really the difference between a typical white label versus a grand vintage one. And Tufts Lane is part of the grand vintage, so when we give them the vineyard designation, it's actually the highest level of quality that we come across in this wine. So this is the Tufts Lane Cabernet Sauvignon. And the ripeness is such here that actually the wine, you will have a hard time figuring out the tannins in it because it's very mellow already.
What does that mean for when it ages?
Tannin will preserve the wine. Whether you perceive them or not depends on how many monomeric tannins there are versus how many of the polymerized version. I think in this case we're dealing with a lot more polymerized than monomeric, and therefore the texture will be more silky and velvety and smoother. So it's a more a texture. In French means small, and Verdot is derived from the word vert, which means green. I don't know about the green part, but Petit has to do with the size of the berry, because it's a very small berry. That's typical of the Petit Verdot. And it is used in Bordeaux primarily in blending. They use, 2, 3, 5%. If a wine is weak in terms of color or tannin or acidity, the go-to grape is Petit Verdot. So they end up adding a little bit of Petit Verdot to enhance the blend. When we planted this grape, I think it was around the year 2000 or 1999, the idea was to use it in the assemblage. And that's basically was the plan. And in 2005, where we made the first wine from these grapes, I used to get friends, let's go down to the cellar, taste from the barrel. And to a person, they would say, before you blend that Petit Verdot, could you say many tastes? We like it as it is by itself. So in the beginning, we said, no, that's not the plan. This is for the assemblage. So it took me a while to realize that, some people, they like it the way it was. So many of them said so that Karim and I figured that maybe we should set aside some of it and let's see if it sells by itself. So when we did the barrel tasting in 2006, we were tasting the 05, we saved 3 barrels of that Petit Verdot, and we sold all of them at the barrel tasting.
Wow.
So that's when we knew that there was a market for it, and so that's when we started actually leaving some of it by itself. So this year, there's only 2 or 3% of the Petit Verdot in the assemblage, I think. And much of it is by itself, so buy all you want, there's plenty of it. Less than that.
So you use these barrels multiple times. I can't
Yes.
imagine you get 15,000 cases out of these barrels.
No. Well, no, actually whatever is here is from 14. And therefore, these barrels we get, if you look back there, this one says 1998. That barrel was initiated in 1998. So we tend to use them for a very long time. We retired a barrel. If you look at this barrel, this is the widest stave in the barrel, but it's the weakest because it has this big hole. And over time, it will crack here and here. And when it cracks, the barrel loses its integrity because air can begin to get in. And that's when we retire them. We sell them, people cut them in half and they make blenders out of it. Anyway, so this is the Petit Verdot, the Apollo Drive Petit Verdot. It did extremely well in 14, and let's see, we'll start from back there. Welcome.
Well, that's sort of what I'm understanding. So you're saying there's 15,000 cases in this room we're standing in right
No,
now?
not in this room. 15,000, that includes the white one.
Includes the whites?
Yes.
But so you have white barrels not in this room? Right, or white?
Many wines don't go into barrels. They only
The
make
stainless steel, yeah, got it.
Yeah, and that's probably better than half of the production.
Got it. So in this room, there might be 7,000 cases? Thank you.
Or less.
Or less?
How many do you want?
No, I'm just curious, I'm trying to get a sense of scale, I'm trying to turn what I'm seeing into bottles, that's all.
Okay.
I'm trying to
It's
understand.
25 cases per barrel, and there's
Oh.
about 200 barrels down there. Or a little bit under 200.
So that's about
5,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you want to get details, talk to Karin. At the end, now if you have any questions, go ahead. It's the same price.
In that 98 barrel, is there any wines from 98 in it?
Oh, no.
I don't know.
No, I think, Karim, is that correct, that everything down here is 14? We may have a couple of 13.
Actually, there's some 15 and 2 barrels of 12 and a few barrels of 13, but the vast majority is all 14.
There's a more precise answer.
Yes.
Charles, are the
Sir.
white label wines 100% varietal or are they blends?
No, actually, the white labels, they're almost 100% varietal, but there are some minor tweaking here and there, but the Grand Vintage ones are 100%. So it's 100% Grand Vintage Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Tuttle's Lane, and Apollo Drive. But the assemblage is a blend. Cabernet Franc is about, what, 90% Cabernet Franc? And the Merlot is 100% Merlot. I think the Cabernet Sauvignon has Petit Verdot in it.
2014 Cabernet Sauvignon, I think it did have a little bit of Petit Verdot.
Right.
I have all of them.
So the Grand Vintage wines are 100% except for the assemblage, which by definition is not. The white labels, I think the Merlot is 100%. The Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, they have a little bit of the others. Any easier questions?
Well, I don't know if it's easier, but I was told that on Long Island, a lot of the pure vintages are just so light, and that there's usually a lot of blending that goes on to give them the body, but yours tasted like they had real body. So is there something different about your grapes, their age, or their...
No, actually,
type
it's driven by the weather.
just by the weather?
Yeah. If we knew how to make them like this, we would make them every year, you know. But it's really, this is a gift of Mother Nature. And she's been very generous. This is 4 years back to back where we're making Grand Vintage wine. And it's all about the weather.
So if the weather had been less good, would there have been more blending?
No, blending doesn't fix it. Blending changes the flavor because you're now bringing more components into it. What creates the intensity is ripeness. Ripeness and the size of the berry. And that's all about the weather. And so a hot, dry season makes another definition. Wine is sun juice. So the more sunshine there is, the better the wine is going to be. And so blending doesn't fix weaknesses. Blending brings out the strength instead. In a bad year, no matter how much you blend, the wine is never going to rise. We don't do assemblage in a weak year. So that's why the Grand Vintage wines are not made in every year. They're only made when you have weather like the last 4 years. Sunny and dry, especially starting in August. August through harvest, you want it to be sunny and dry. In June, you pray for rain because much of the vine is water. But by August, where you no longer have growth in the vine, you want the rain to stop. And the last few years have been very dry and sunny.
And do you do more or less leaf removal? Does that impact, depend on the weather?
Actually, we do leaf removal with a vengeance. Why? Because Long Island, being an island, and the summer being typically humid at night, the dew sets on the vines, and the vines are wet. If you shake them in the morning, they drip. And because our summers tend to have warm nights, that stimulates the development of downy mildew. At 65 degrees, in the presence of leaf wetness, it takes 6 hours for downy mildew to sporulate. The researchers have figured out that it's a curve like that. If you are able to take it away from the bottom to 6 hours, all of a sudden you're dealing with 8 hours or whatever. So the goal, therefore, is to disrupt that microclimate in the vine, such that either you change the temperature or you cause water to evaporate faster, or both. And therefore they came up with the idea that if you remove the leaves in the fruit zone, because the fruit typically is protected by leaves on either side, that microclimate inside is very stale, hot and humid. By removing the leaves, you create ventilation. By creating ventilation, you lower the temperature, you cause the dew to evaporate faster, and now it takes more than 6 hours, and therefore it tends to abort, and therefore you end up with cleaner fruit. So ever since we learned that in the late 90s, we do it with a vengeance. So we remove all the first 6 leaves on both sides of the vine. If they heard me say that in California, they would say, "You're crazy." Why? Because in California it's so much warmer than it is here, that if they remove the leaves on both sides, they get sunburned. But here, because it's much cooler geographically, we remove them on both sides. We avoid the development of downy mildew, but then what happens is more interesting, and that is, number one, you expose the fruit to the sunlight. If you go buy apples at the farm stand, or peaches, you want to grab the ones with the red cheeks, because they grew in the sunlight, they have nicer flavors than the ones they grew in the shade. You know that instinctively right now. The second thing is there's another fungus called powdery mildew, the organism of which is very sensitive to UV light. And therefore, when you remove the leaves, you're suppressing that other fungus, making therefore for cleaner fruit. And finally, there is the fact that if we backtrack for a second, Cabernet Sauvignon is a mutation from Cabernet Franc. Sauvignon Blanc is a mutation from Cabernet Franc. So Cabernet Franc is the older one of the three. But all three have some common genes, not genes like these, genes as GNE. And therefore, in the skin of the grape, there's a chemical, it's called methoxypyrazine. In Cabernet Franc, it tastes like bell pepper. In Cabernet Sauvignon, it tastes like green beans. And in Sauvignon Blanc, it tastes grassy. Some people call it cat pee. I've never tasted that. And so it turns out, when we started doing this aggressive leaf pulling, somebody said, we really don't know what we're doing, because we could be doing something that's detrimental to the vine. And so they gave a pot of money to some Cornell researchers.
The topping line.
And you give research. We don't know how to remove these flavors in the wine. Therefore, when we talk about winemaking, is actually the growing of the fruit. That's what we mean. That there are certain things that... Yeah, very much. Thank you. My pleasure. Enjoy. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us, and if there are more questions, we can continue.
I've been doing really things to chat to you about this wine, it's really good. But I think that can wait till everybody else has
All right.
as well.
Can you take a picture of it?
It's a video, hello.
Hello? Hello. Okay, take a picture. Yeah,
Celine, can I try some of that?
yeah, that's excellent. I bought 6 bottles of it.
Did you try that in Lewis?
Middles?
The 2013, the 2014 Chenin Blanc Middles. Oh yeah, I tried that.
My brother told me. 8 people, me and Linda.
Okay.
Anything-
Karen is coming over with the baby.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she's feeding. Is that mine? I just want to taste it. Just a taste. Thank you.
It's just no intervention.
Photography and wine.
Wine and video, okay.
Is here you is. La 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 la. This is
She just came from her first children's birthday party. Hence the balloon.
Hi, baby. Hi, baby.
She wants the
She said,
camera.
I want that camera.
How you feeling? How are you, Mom?
Good. Can't
Looking
complain.
good. Looking
She
good.
keeps me on my toes, right? Right?
You say hello? Hi. Hi, baby. Where are you going to sit?
The Grand Vintage wine.
No, I'm fine.
Can we taste the
Me, walk
2014
in. I'm
semi-dry
driving.
Riesling?
So I gotta be careful. He's not.
In the semi-dry.
How many
But
glasses?
I still enjoy, you notice?
The best white wine.
Oh, the best. I see it right there, right there.
Toast with tune. And then you can bring,
First grade was
we'll bring some plates.
good.
Oh, dear heart, we brought birthday plates.
Oh, so
We have birthday plates, we have napkins.
Are we going to move right away to the cake, or should we have some cheese and pate? We would need some bread.
Yeah.
Wait on the cake.
I'll put it right here, right here.
No, we'll have to put it in the because in the other fridge.
You know, if we have some bread.
It's sitting right there. Isn't there bread? Oh, let me get the bread. I have it down. Yeah, just need to be refrigerated.
Oh, it has to be refrigerated because the icing is whipped cream
I think he's still on.
and it runs the risk of melting.
Really, I know Steve Janis.
He might not have, maybe it's like.
But you notice this over there? You notice?
And that's delicious usually.
Is Kareem going to come up and join us?
No, no, he has to work and sweep the floor.
He's topping the barrel. Well, here's to the whole Ponzio group.
The whole bunch of you.
Cheers to everyone.
Congratulations.
Nice to see all of you looking so good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
God bless
Is this someone's or no? Can I have it?
Well,
I can have it?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Salim poured it.
excellent.
Cotin and Bouchon.
I don't see it from here. Sorry. Oh, this is the Cotin.
Cotin Bouchon, this is Brie de Meaux.
Brie de Meaux, which is my favorite.
Which
brie.
one?
Brie de Meaux. Okay.
This one is Brie de Meaux.
And this is Priya Savarin, and this is, I can give you the exact name. This comes from California.
Oh,
Jasper
no.
Hill.
Yeah, this one is from your favorite.
Am I confusing Jasper Hill with Hamburg
Can I ask
Park?
you, Ursula,
Okay,
can I
yeah.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
I know, like, do they tell you anything to stay away from?
No.
No, my
Dietary?
doctor. No, what the doctor tells me. My urologist. He says stay away from cheese unless it got a lot of holes in it.
Well, wait
But you know
a
what?
minute.
But I'm Italian, I thought.
I am on liberty.
You have cow?
I'm liberty.
No.
Did you, why?
No, he says stay away. He says.
Do you have a
cholesterol.
heart issue?
No, mine's
What is
160.
it?
Oh,
What is
So
it?
he goes like this to me. He
He's
says.
doctor.
His
not a
urologist
good, what I
can
said.
have- His
What my
urologist says
cardiologist
he
told
can
me?
have cheese in it.
Urologist. Urologist.
He says not that you eat it
Oh,
like
he
every
has
day, every day, every
issues
day.
with kidneys?
This is for you and Karen.
oh my God.
That's the dark chocolate nuts,
God bless it.
the almonds, the walnuts, and the
I wanna
hazelnuts,
smell it.
with a extra row of almond, hazelnuts, and walnuts.
Are you retired now?
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. My pleasure.
Oh,
She's on Chicago Fire and Chicago PD.
And we have a birthday cake for you.
And Anthony was
And
on.
we just need
Oh my God.
someone with
Fill in,
matching.
right?
He was in the
He
New
was
York
on
Times.
TV.
He was in the New York
Yeah.
Times.
oh, did you you got? Nah, you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh. Did you see this?
I only saw, you know, by email. I think. I mean, I don't
No,
know.
it wasn't the Times. We had the hard
Assuming-
copy.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic.
We had the hard copy at the Times.
And here it is.
Actually, the light is shining on him. If you look at the...
What was that? He's an attorney sitting there. This is on the Empire.
Uh-oh, hello.
Bring it up.
Kareem, look at her.
Tony, do you notice they have the light shining on you? Everybody else is dark. The light is on
You see
you.
your
There was a
Thank you.
there was a coup.
Aw,
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Is there? Oh, 6 to 12 months, perfect.
yay.
Wow, this is dinner. Dinner for me.
Good night, Macy.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Macy.
Please.
That's
I'll
the
get it.
Cabernet.
Oh, can I try that?
Of course.
Oh, that's fine.
That's the 2010.
Can I try it?
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh-oh. Ooh, ooh.
Did you see the video I sent you of her? Of her first experience? She's never seen a balloon before. And this little kid comes up to her and goes, "Little baby,
So
I got
Charles,
you a
were you
balloon."
satisfied with the wine
She
additive
takes it.
reviews?
Oh, I tell you, it's in many ways we're very happy with them. Yes, but I mean personally, I like even the English more than the ratings. What he wrote is actually. That's the rating, which are quite good.
Some
What he
patty.
wrote,
Oh, no, thanks.
what he wrote about
Charlie
it
wants some patty.
Here, I'll put that down.
was very nice.
Here.
Look,
Thank
this is a
you.
case I'm working on. The raw meat of gunpoint.
This is an antibody. That won't be of much use anymore. So we'll take that off. Actually,
we don't
I'm
want to close
going
off.
to put this
I
on
mean,
the
the face is
smaller
not too
plate.
good because the camera.
And Charles,
upgrade his cameras, but let's not.
Mark Swires appears to be excited about sound, right?
Well, that's me as well.
When you
We were told that I
read, you
videotaped.
can feel
I
this.
mean, he's the one that went to the store. I think he's gonna get definitely identified when I put him on TV. You know,
Are you undercover?
No, I work in the detective school.
Okay.
Oh, someone's gonna, they give him a reward?
Oh, somebody called.
Yeah,
Well,
put
his face is gonna get definitely recognized, right?
Yeah.
I just got the video last week, so I'm just
They'll
gonna.
put that in the newspaper story.
Need another,
This lady has dark hair.
Charles is
She's
thinking this is
5'2".
way.
She's like, "Want to be in the lineup tonight?" And Fran was like, "How much do I get paid?" It was something like.
They get good money out of
So
here.
Fran had to walk in and do the mug shot, and she had to get identified. It was very funny. Meanwhile, she's a preschool teacher.
I'll show you, what do you call it? Look, I'll tell you, these guys,
more napkins, okay?
Always more.
Yes.
But I mean, overall, I think Robert Parker's Wine Advocate has more prestige than the Wine Spectator.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Oh,
We'll
I
hear
think-
it from.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, it's like any other job, it's a job.
And
It's a-
thank you for
And then about five
helping me out.
times a year ago, you know.
There was a
Okay,
link
like they had the Murray
at the
Bird
bottom of
on there.
page 1,
Oh, right.
and
yeah.
there was more reviews,
Stop there.
and that's where the
feel at
problem
home.
is.
Should we get more red wine or the Riesling is good for you?
One time, it
Fine.
was like.
I had enough. Really did.
And he went to some show.
What about you?
The Good Day Show or something like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
somewhere
want
on the
some
west side of
Cabernet
that, so
Sauvignon?
they must
or-
have-
How about you? What do you want?
We were talking, I couldn't hear. You said something about Jasper Hill?
No.
This is a Briard Cava.
think we got Jasper.
Tell me, what is the Moses?
It's Moses Sleep. It just says Moses Sleeper.
It's a Jasper Hill.
Freestyle cow favorite. I don't think we got Jasper. There's Nancy's Hudson Valley.
Yeah, but
that's
it's
the,
made by Jasper Hill.
Okay, so maybe
Moses
that's
Sleeper.
it. Maybe that's the Moses Sleeper. It doesn't say Jasper Hill, but maybe that's it.
This is now, for all of us who have some cholesterol issues,
Yeah,
you have to be careful. This is
Too late
triple
for that.
gram.
that's
It's already in.
But the Brie de Meaux is very, you won't believe it, it's only 45%.
What do you mean only? This is like
low.
What?
poison.
Fat.
They're all. The cheese is awesome.
But if you, did you taste this? The,
I taste this one.
now listen, let me get it. Joy and Billy.
Right.
Yeah, because I said sometimes it's hard for me to keep you.
They're both
abreast.
in law enforcement.
I know that, but didn't one of you said you were going to take an early
I
retirement?
retired already, but I'm working with the U.S. Marshal Service.
So how does that work?
Federal, yeah, in Brooklyn, but it's a contract job, but I'm working with the Marshal Service in Brooklyn in the courthouse right now with them.
Belongs to the courthouse.
And I do all the, what I'm doing is the juries and it's a court officer job that you're working with the marshals. So we're doing the Lufthansa case. You know, the Lufthansa,
Yeah, where they
Lufthansa
had
case, the
the
one that stole all, yeah.
guys.
Where you had,
Still? You're
yeah.
still working on it?
Yeah, still working on it. I had to sit in the front
It was
between
in
the
the
jury and the judge. You know, like Judge Judy, you sit in the front. So I was sitting there, and thank God they switch you out every hour because it gets boring.
Oh, you have.
You know,
it
even though
with you. I
you
have
you
them
just,
when I moved.
That was a big thing. That was with,
They're still working on it. Thank you.
they made a movie out of
they
it.
moved it, but they got the guy,
Robert De Niro and all that
the
back
guy
then.
is set,
Good
80
fellas.
years old.
Ursula?
The guy's 80 years old.
The 2013
He moved out to
Grand
East
Vintage
Borges.
Merlot as
You know,
well.
and bought a house that supposedly
Okay,
was the
thank you,
money
dear.
that he stole in East Borges. But they stole all the jewelry from, it was the heist.
Yes.
From Kennedy Airport. They stole, what was it, how many millions?
And did you have the?
They made a movie out of it. Good
Yeah,
fellas.
they used it for
We'll
gambling.
try that too.
Yeah,
This is
it was
the you want to
a
do
historic
the
heist.
for the Cabernet?
Oh, yeah,
The jury
sure.
gets picked up in vans, they get
Shall
brought to
I
the
get
courthouse.
you different
Oh,
glass?
And
no,
they
this
get,
is fine.
but once they're in the courthouse, they have to get constant
Linda, what
guard.
about you? Would
You
you
know,
like
because
to
they don't want no one
taste
tampering
this?
with the jurors.
Do you have some water?
I'll get you water.
Yeah, they want to put him away for life. But how much life could he live? He's like 80.
Chicago, you were residing all the day you were here, the ratings, I mean,
You know,
I was like,
that was an amazing event actually when we went to Chicago. I mean, we felt so important up there.
we went, I guess,
With Tony taking us all over the place.
yeah. We
And
were what, like
unfortunately,
3
the
days up in
distributor didn't
Chicago?
follow up.
Yeah, but
You know,
we had
we lost our advocate. Remember David?
David, who took the wine, when he moved to Arizona, he carried the wine in
I mean,
the.
David was an amazing guy.
What was
He
his,
did it
Kelly, what
single-handedly.
was the name of the sales guy, the red?
David Kisler?
Kisler,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kisler.
And he loved the Pomanac wine. Cheers, Katerina.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it's too bad. You should see Karim's pictures when he was his daughter's age. If you didn't look at the eyes, you would think they're the same.
Well, he also has some.
Her
She
eyes,
definitely
her eyes
has
are her
some.
She
mom.
changes like minute to minute.
No, she has your eyes. She has your eyes.
But no, he is Karim's eyes too. What do you mean?
Okay.
Yeah, there's some days she really looks like Kareem, and then there's days where I'm like, oh my God, that's my baby picture, so.
Blank and say, wait a minute, where, you know, it's like, even, I was trying to explain this to the neurologist because on Monday I had my first anniversary of the first stroke.
What day?
So, well, the stroke was on Halloween night, October 31st, but Monday, November 2nd, I had my appointment with, this is Dr. Leifer, who is head of the stroke center at Columbia, at Cornell Presbyterian, not Columbia, right? Cornell Presbyterian, 70th and York. And so he, you know, they did some tests, they did a brain scan, they did the carotid, and he said, I told him, I said, from time to time, and he said, you know, no matter what, these are little things which is still in the recovery process. Part of it is also called now aging or something. But he said, all of it, he said, I mean, you made a remarkable comeback. And he's a teetotaler, he doesn't drink. But he knows my history, I mean, our background. So he said,
she's a drunk.
so he said, I guess it must be all the good wine you're drinking. So, and what?
No,
So
this is
tell me,
actually
but how
pork.
is life in
I tried,
Chicago?
but that's not a screw cap.
How is
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Corinne.
Oh my God.
Happy birthday to you.
Man, that's something.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Corinne. Happy birthday to you.
Katerina was just Okay, ready? We're gonna blow up the
She's happy.
Wow!
2, 3.
Yay! Yay!
That was
Thank
fun.
you
That's
very
funny,
much.
man.
There's even claw marks.
She goes,
in
what the
it.
heck is that?
Yes.
want to cut the cake here?
Okay.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
So funny.
That looks like a delicious
Beautiful.
cake.
It does look like a delicious
Anthony, what is it made of?
Tony made it.
This is whipped cream frosting, and inside is 2 layers of chocolate cake, and between the 2 layers is cannoli filling.
And Anthony just left.
Italian bakery. Come from an Italian bakery.
Anthony's Italian.
Frank and Sons Bakery in Mastic.
Not too
And
far.
that's real close where you get your oysters from.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much.
Oh, our pleasure.
Kareem, make a wish as your mom cuts the cake.
It's a Omi. Come
Now we can make a wish with 2 hands.
She is something, man. The little kid. Awesome kid.
La 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 la.
Make a wish.
Now the phone's gonna be like, Kareem, you won the
Very
lottery.
happy, right? Very happy.
Yay! It's party time again.
Loves parties. Loves parties.
Papa is lucky. Wow, another party.
Karine, your Assemblage 2013 is really smooth, and it seems like it's all there, but I'm sure it has many, many years
That's for
to
your
go.
mama. That's for your mama.
No. First start with Linda.
Me?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, years if not decades. Especially with the screw cap. It'll
So
last.
inside is cannoli cream?
Cannoli cream inside between the 2 layers.
Say, that sounds delish.
I wish it was.
It sounds like a fat-free cake.
It is. It's magic cake.
Some more Riesling? Would you like some? Tony,
Actually, you know what they say?
can
They
you
say
get
the
some
full
more
fat is
Riesling?
better than low fat.
Tony, he needs, because this is,
You want another glass? I'll get you another glass.
no, Tony has a clean glass next to him.